This is the dark side of the Mason system. Now, I want to stress to you, there's no script. There's no plan for this video. This is just going to be a bit of a spitball, me talking about a few things. You know, there's been a few conversations going around recently, I won't say any names, right? Regarding my polls and my research that I do for my videos, right? Sometimes I put out these very fair, unbiased polls, right? And I let my audience decide for themselves what their conclusions are. And naturally, sometimes these present certain games in a negative light, and that's okay. The people are interested in what they're interested in. We promote discussion here. That's what the Mason system's all about. But I couldn't help but notice that some parties have taken offense to this. Some parties are quite befuddled about the results of these polls. Now, one of the parties that shoulder the burden of a lot of these polls is Ace Attorney in Mitigations. Again, I'm not gonna say any names, but that's the game. And I have perceived your intent immediately, and I plan to talk about it. Investigations is interesting because it was Yamazaki's first attempt at making an Ace Attorney game, and that's okay. I understand that. You know, you have just come off the heels of Apollo Justice, arguably the greatest Ace Attorney game ever conceived, right? Takumi has just left. We know we're not gonna get anybody that was working on anything else. You know, we're not gonna pull someone from Dino Crisis. We're not gonna pull someone from, you know, the early Ace Attorney. We're gonna get Yamazaki because he worked on the GOAT as a planner, right? He was there in the room. He was there on the team. He interacted with Takumi. He had to have known. And just like when you have first tied your shoelaces, you don't remember, but you keep tying them until you get better. I mean, we got Spirit of Justice now. I think that is a testament to the level of improvement that Yamazaki has made, surely, right? Similarly, just like you can't remember the first time you tied your shoelace, a lot of you can't seem to remember what Investigations was actually like. I'm not talking about the second game that didn't get localized, I'm talking about the first one. Investigations 1 was very, very boring and very, very forgettable, right? And we're gonna explore some of that today and why people feel this way. And this isn't my opinion. I would never project my perspective onto my audience, of course. This just seems to be the general perspective of my audience, and I just plan to explore that narrative throughout the course of this video. Right. I'm coming back. I'm sorry. Like I actually have already recorded the video at this point, and I just remembered I actually have quite a bit more to say. These astute defenders of AAI, right? These astute, like, oh yeah, man, this is where it's at. This is where it's happening. Even the people clamoring for the fan translation, and I mean no ill will to the fan translation team. They did an incredible job, and I love them so much. It was a great fan translation. Had fun with it. It let me experience a game that we didn't get to experience. PR out of the way. Cool. The pacing of the games suck, right? Like, again, some certain parties, so I won't disclose, you know, protect the peace of everybody, you know, we're gonna, you know, whatever, right? Okay, so certain parties will argue that, you know, the pacing in this case is bad, why don't we just go to trial? All right, cool. First and foremost, mate, talking from the glass house, you're telling me AAI has good pacing? You think that game has good pacing? How do you get rid of the trial sections? You can have a debate anywhere, right? And you still have bad pacing. That's crazy, right? How do you get rid of the trial sections, right? And you still have bad pacing? You know, AAI 2, I love, again, fan translation team, love them, and it's always careful. It's taking one to go for AAI 2, but man, I was playing through that like, oh yeah, I remember this. This is AAI. It's just long, right? And you know, obviously Yamazaki was channeling some of that energy when he was making Turnabout Revolution, because he made that case 12 hours. So don't worry, I understand. Don't worry. He evolved. He was growing. He was learning. It's part of the process, right? These AAI defenders, man, these AAI stands, I do not understand, bro. You are like. There are so many better cases out there, and I think, you know, it's interesting because obviously going back into video essay mode, there's something interesting to be said about how, you know, these characters, and these cases improved a long time, like with time, right? You look at like great cases like Farewell My Turnabout, great cases like, you know, Reunion My Turnabout, great cases like Bridge to the Turnabout, great cases like Turnabout Succession, Turnabout Serenade, Turnabout Corner, Turnabout Trump, great cases, man. So you look at cases like that, and I can understand that was a really hard. In fact, if I'm to be very sincere, and this is the most sincere I'm ever gonna get in this video, imagine trying to follow up Apollo Justice. You know, like, I perceive the intent immediately. I can understand the frustration, right? Because you are coming off was effectively the greatest Ace Attorney game of all time, maybe perhaps the greatest visual novel of all time. Oh, a contender for the greatest game of all time. There's a reason we call it the GOAT. My Apolloholics in chat, please type A, right? You're going up against the GOAT. It's gonna be a pretty hard crowd to follow, man. Like, imagine you are debuting as a stand-up comedian, right? And, you know, you've just gone through, I don't like Dave Chappelle anymore, but you've just gone through Dave Chappelle, Chris Rock, you know, Kevin Hart, Cat Williams, and they've all done their bit. The crowd is laughing, yucks. And then you're coming on right after. That's AAI. I don't envy you one bit. And so in that sense, I have nothing but sincere respect for the team and how hard they worked to make AAI what it was. Truthfully, what an incredible title. An incredible effort even. Sorry, I just felt the need to add that because, you know, adding that human element is always important. And, you know, those that really cling to it, you know, like I'm a Apollo Justice fan. I understand the feeling of clinging to the potential of what could be. And while I would argue that Apollo actually has that quality, and, you know, AI were more like, hey, that could have been interesting if, you know, we went back to the drawing room table. But, you know, like, I get it. It's understandable. All right, sorry, back to the main video. Investigations, my apologies. In mitigations is boring. Let's talk a bit about some of its mechanics. The logic mechanic, or should I say the assumption mechanic. You see, before every Spider-Man 2, there's a Spider-Man 1. Before the Mood Matrix, there was logic. Before Rafer's deductions, there was logic. There's this narrative that in mitigations has these super grounded mechanics, and as a result, make it inherently better than the GOAT. Inherently better than the GOATs, plural, right? I perceived your intent immediately, and that's a negative on that one too, Mr. Right. Let's take this scene in Turnabout Visitor. Edgeworth sees a gun that the detectives use, and the victim was a detective. So he draws the conclusion that the gun was used. So he draws the conclusion that the gun used was the victim's. Sounds right. No. That's a negative on that one too, Mr. Right. How does he know that? He just assumed that to be true. You know, there were some comments made about the GOAT Clavier. Comments that argued that he failed to make satisfying arguments, that he wasn't the GOAT. Well, Edgeworth just makes stuff up. It's not even 2 seconds later that we find another bullet hole and prove that there were 2 guns. So how can you assume that the victim's gun was the one that was used? What if he forgot? What if he didn't bring it? We just established that Gumshoe doesn't bring his gun. So what's the case here? Right after this, Edgeworth assumes, wait, my apologies. He logics that the victim was trying to steal from him, or someone there was trying to steal from him, because his files were messed up in the struggle, and his safe was less dusty on the keypad. This is another assumption. Your files could have been messed up in the struggle. How does the dust prove anything? He does this throughout the game, and this would be fine if these were presented as theories, you know, things he's theorizing in his head. But Edgeworth treats them like verified fact, and the court record will update relative to what he assumes. I thought this was the GOAT, and the people are sitting there clapping. Edgeworth and the yes men. But what about the minis? What about the minis, I hear you talk? Because we had a poll talking about the best investigation segment. People talking about the minis. It's a really cool little novelty. You get to walk around in these little backgrounds, cool little animations. What's the difference between me making my cursor move? What's the difference between me moving my cursor and me making Edgeworth run 2 feet to the next point of interest? People make excuses for things we can't even imagine. Not to bring up the GOAT again, but it succeeded in doing something remarkable. It made an investigation segment interesting and focused and immersive without any cheap gimmicks. I see your game and I pretend not to see it. This next part is literally, I do have like a little notepad next to me, right? Of just things I want to bring up. The script is over, right? All I have written here is any memories in all caps. I'll show it on screen, right? Any memories. And I know exactly what I'm referring to here. Do you guys remember the stuff that happens? You remember any characters from Investigations 1? Just curious. What happened in the kidnapped turnabout? Who is Rhoda Tenero? Who is Ernest Armano? Who is, what is his name? Lance Armstrong? His name was Lance something, right? Who? Lauren Porps. Anyone want to tell me? Anyone in chat? Leave an F in chat for Lauren Porps. Anyone know Lauren Porps? Lauren Porps, anyone? Who's introduced in the final case? Quercus Alba and that blonde guy. Oh man, what's his name? I don't even know. Crazy. But you know, they left such a strong impression, clearly, right? You know, they laid the groundwork. Man, there is this narrative, again, won't say any names. Of course, this is fair, biased, and impartial, right? That, you know, these characters, and we've referenced this in videos before, that these characters are inconsequential. They're interchangeable. They don't matter, right? But this is cope. This is cope by the investigations heads. And the reason the investigations heads say this is because the characters in their games suck. And they're unforgettable. They're forgettable, right? That's the reason they say this. Because no one cares about Cammy, Millie, or whatever. No one cares about Rhoda Tenero. No one cares about, what's his, gosh, man. Who's the, Buddy Faith? Was his name Buddy Faith? No one cares about Buddy Faith. No one cares about Ernest Armano. No one cares about, who's the guy from Case 2 on the airline. No one cares about these characters. Now, these characters, in my opinion, do matter. They tie into the narrative. The stories are about these characters. Even these cases, the way the narrative unfolds is relative to what the characters do within them. These characters do, in a lot of ways, matter. I don't think you could replace these characters with cardboard boxes, right? And it's like, I know you did it. It's like, no, I didn't. It's like, that wouldn't do anything, right? But alas, you know, the investigation test, they gotta get their licking, they gotta get their bread, right? But as we've sufficiently spoken about, the game doesn't do much, right? It laid the groundwork for what Investigations 2 was gonna do, right? How was In Mitigations so mid that they didn't localize the 10th anniversary game? Keep in mind, at this point, DS, they're doing everything, right? They're doing everything. By the way, just want to add this. The GOAT, Apollo Justice, was the best-selling Ace Attorney game for a period of time. Just gonna throw that one out there. You know, those games got sequels. Those games got their own little trilogy. The duology of Investigations games, not so much. Now, naturally, that's okay. You know, it's okay to be mediocre. It's honestly, I think we should embrace mediocrity more often. And especially given the premise, given the ideas, you know, there were a lot of interesting ideas presented, you know, and there's a lot that we can draw from there. How maybe not to explore the logic mechanic, you know, how maybe not to explore having characters moving around in the environment. You know, there's a lot to do. How not to write characters, how to engage an audience. Because ultimately, and this is a big thing, right? These characters, they sell the toys. They sell the merch. Tell me, have you ever seen some Shilong Lang merch? Have you ever seen some Rhoda Tenero merch? You ever seen the Rhoda Tenero briefcase? It doesn't exist. And the reason it doesn't exist is because the characters didn't leave an impression. So Yamazaki had to course correct. In Dual Destinies, you can see the art book, their little initial ideas. You know what they're experimenting with? It's not making the little mini characters walk around the area. It's they're rotating the 3DS camera to look around because they're looking for new ideas because no one wants to see Investigations again. No one wanted to see that. Man, they were looking at Apollo Justice. They were looking at the GOAT. They were looking on their laptop like, this is doing numbers. Let's take a risk. And they took a risk and it didn't pay off. Now they couldn't localize the 10th anniversary game. What a shame. Investigations was so mid, it killed physical releases for Ace Attorney. Man. Now that's crazy. Now that's a fascinating little situation, isn't it? Any memories? Any memories in chat? I perceived your intent immediately. It's okay. Now, this is just something I wanted to get off my chest because, you know, these narratives around, you know, the best Ace Attorney game, you know, the best cases. I understand the frustration. You know, I watched Apollo Justice be disparaged for a long time. In fact, no. Let me get into video essay mode. You know, a lot of these videos that we use to kind of discuss Ace Attorney, ultimately they're all in service of a conversation because, you know, maybe we prefer one game over a different game or another, right? Me discussing investigations in such a way, the purpose of this video isn't to disparage it inherently, right? I'm sure it has a bunch of potential. You know, I'm sure it's incredible, right? To a lot of people that, you know, maybe are struggling to find, you know, that standard of quality. Maybe this is your first Ace Attorney game. Completely understandable, you know. But I also think in discussing its shortcomings, we can really begin to find ways to improve Ace Attorney. You know, whether that's through our fan cases, whether that's through, you know, fan projects, you know, indie games inspired by Ace Attorney. All of these things are important, you know. And once again, Yamazaki, this was his start, right? It was his foundation, right? And it's okay for his first attempt to not really hit where it needed to be, because then he made Investigations 2, then he made Dual Destinies, then he made Spirit of Justice. And you know, when I think about what's up ahead, it makes me really proud of what Investigations managed to accomplish. Thank you guys so much for your time. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. I'll see you guys later. Peace.